record on this computer. Yeah, it is recording.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. It's nice to have you all here. My name is Daniel. I'm gonna wrap things as quick as possible, but my intention is to make sure we all have a very good understanding. And so if you have questions, try to jot it down so that at the end, we can have some meaningful conversation. So my name is Daniel. You can call me Prof. Dan. That's what I've been called ever since I was like 7 years old. And yeah, thank you to the association for inviting me for this. Okay, so I'm still gonna show this towards the end, but I just wanted to scan this code. If you so wish, there is a community WhatsApp where we do follow up, people ask questions all about this EB2 NIW or the EB1A. So I'm just gonna give it a few seconds. You can scan to join. You won't really have access to it right now. There's going to be admin, checking to allow you access. Just a few more seconds and we can continue. Don't worry, I'm still going to come up with this later on in the slide. All right, so my goal today is to clearly explain to you all one of the awesome pathways to becoming a U.S. permanent resident. Perhaps to those online, to those of you in the auditorium, you all came to the U.S., perhaps through various visa routes. And then one of you all goals is to become a permanent resident, a legal resident in the United States. And so today I'm going to be diving through some of these key pathways that many people are beginning to be aware of. And now we have more people applying, more queue on ground and the likes. Well, to start with, it's always good to know at least who is this facilitator. I do not normally like to do this, but in my humbleness, let me quickly tell you something about myself. So my home country is Nigeria. I was born in Nigeria. I grew up in Nigeria. I had my bachelor's degree and a few years of work experience in Nigeria. As a West African country. People will say, yes, it is the most dominant Black nation on earth. I had a master's degree, a joint degree from Nigeria and France, a master's degree and some work experience in the United Kingdom. And this is not something so kind of unique. Many of you here have been to many countries, right? But then you are now in the United States. So what is obtainable? Why are you here? You want to remain here, and that's what we're talking about. And I have a couple of about 4 years work experience also in the United Arab Emirates. And presently, as we are fortunate to be here in the United States, and presently I'm working, doing my PhD full-time, EB2 NIW approved, EB1A approved. And so today, I believe I can share my own personal experience with you. At the same time, many persons we have worked with as well, because I also double as an entrepreneur. So to start with GreenCard, just a general overview, we've been hearing about GreenCard, what exactly it is. It's another name for permanent resident card. And your permanent resident card allows you to live and work permanently, a legal resident of the United States, right? And if you get your green card, after a couple of years, it varies for some persons, but ideally, after about 5 years, you are able to apply for the US citizenship, which is conditioned based on certain criteria. For example, you've obtained your green card. What next? Did you stay in the country? Did you leave the country more than 6 months, within 1 year, things like that? Did you remain in a good citizen? Things like that will affect if you are able to transition from your green card permanent residence to a US citizen. And how can you get this? So again, I'm trying to lay a very good foundation so that we understand what this thing is all about. To get to obtain the green card, there are different routes. Many of us all, when we come to the US as an international student, for example, you've seen people through marriage routes, you've seen some persons through family, maybe the spouse is a permanent resident, then it's easier for you to get the green card or get citizenship, things like that, through entrepreneurship. But our major goal is this major route, and you can see as it is distinguished on the screen as the employment-based. Who qualifies and how can you apply for this employment-based? That's the main thing we're going to be talking about today. EB, as it is popularly called, employment-based. There are different categories, and don't be scared. When we hear the word employment-based, the first thing we want to think about is that, oh, that means I need an employer to be able to file this petition. But here I'm telling you today that you necessarily do not need an employer for some of the categories of this employment-based, even though the name sounds employment, right? So for the EB, we have the EB1, EB2, EB3, EB4, and EB5, all classified as employment-based. For the EB1, which we are going to be talking about, one of them mainly, it's subdivided into the EB1A, EB1B, and the EB1C. And for the EB1A, it refers to as the extraordinary ability. When we hear some of these things, at times one gets scared like, oh, does that mean I have to be a genius? Does that mean I have to be kind of extraordinary? That's not really the narrative. It all depends on who you are and how you can write your story. There is also the EB2 category, which a focus on the EB2 NIW, which we are also going to be talking about today. And just to lay the foundation, the basic things here is that you must have an advanced degree or you have an exceptional ability, and there are certain other criteria to consider for that, which again, I'm going to talk about soon. The other categories, like I did mention, is the EB3, 4, and 5. We are not going to focus on any of these. So for today, our main focus is going to be on these two. And why? For the EB1A and the EB2 NIW, aside these two categories, every other category requires you to have an employer, just as the name implies, employment-based. So a main requirement is that, do you have a job offer from an employer who is able to sponsor your green card processing? However, for these two categories, under the EB2 NIW and the EB1A, you do not need an employer, which is a very good thing. And that means that as you do not need an employer to file for you, then you can do it yourself. And that's what we call the self-petitioning. And so this is what we're going to be talking about today. Like I told you earlier, I am a beneficiary of the EB2 NIW and the EB1A, self-petitioned, which you all can do. So let's go a little bit deeper into the EB2 NIW as a self-petitioner. So I listed these as about 6 or 7 different steps, one of which is, are you qualified? Because that's the very first thing you want to know. Can you do this thing? Do you have the right information about it? Because there is a misconception that people say, for example, looking at the context of many of the people in the room, I would assume that a majority of us are students, FRU students, or any other institution students, right? And you've come into this country with maybe, for example, a non-immigrant visa, which is mainly the F1, or if you have a dependent, F2, or some of us exchange visitor through the J1 or the different other types. So you want to see, are you qualified? Then the next thing is just so we know that this thing is more or less like straightforward if you understand what it is all about. And one of the things I want you to know is that the very first thing is, do you have an advanced degree? And what does that mean? Or do you fall under the exceptional ability category? What does that mean as well? I will briefly explain all of this. And of course, the major criteria for the NIW, we're also going to talk about it as well, which involves 3 different prongs. To expatiate further on the advanced degree, I want us to try to follow me, and in case you have questions, the first thing is, do you have an advanced degree, and what does that mean? So for example, if you have a master's degree, you have an advanced degree. There are some people that move straight from bachelor's degree to PhD. And so they would say, oh, I've not obtained a master's degree, so that means I do not have an advanced degree. No, that's not true. Because in your PhD route or journey, you have possibly fulfilled some of the requirements of having a master's, even if the certificate has not been awarded to you. So if your route is from bachelor's straight to PhD, you can still claim to be having an advanced degree. So that's 1. 2, if you do not have a master's degree, but you hold a bachelor's degree plus at least 5 years of work experience, which some of you all have. Before coming to this country, you already have some good work experience in your field. So if you have at least 5 years of work experience with your bachelor's degree, then you also qualify for the advanced degree. I want to believe that is a bit clear to us all. So again, I'm just laying the foundation. You might not get the whole picture today, but with this presentation, at least you have an idea of what it is. Then you can ask questions later on. And with these basic things, you can go ahead later on to, do more research to have better understanding. So let's clear the part of advanced degree. Then for the exceptional ability, if you do not have an advanced degree at all, you can also claim the exceptional ability. And that's, say, for example, some would say, what if I don't have a bachelor's degree? Can I still qualify? Yes, it's possible. So if you have, for example, in African countries, we have people that go to colleges alone, like they call it like a polytechnic, just like we have college here, like 2 years college in the US. You have like a polytechnic in Africa, or HND, in the case of Nigeria and the likes. So if you have that kind of degree, and there are a couple of other criteria that the USCIS, United States Citizenship and Immigration Service, considers. Out of about 6 or 7 criteria, they say if you can fulfill 3 of these 7 or 6 criteria, then you qualify under the exceptional ability. And what are they? 1, if you can prove that you have a degree from maybe a diploma or a college or a university degree, and you can prove that, 1. Another one is if you have about 10 years of work experience. Remember, for the advanced degree, it is bachelor's plus 5 years of work experience. But if you are claiming under the exceptional ability, which means maybe you do not have a bachelor's degree, it can still hold, but it should be like 10 years of work experience. Another criteria is maybe you've commanded a high salary, and you can just oppose that yes, throughout my work experience timeline, this is my salary, which is high compared to others in my field. And maybe you also you hold membership in a professional membership in some association in your field. So some of these things, you do not have to have all. Like I said, there are about 6 or 7 of them. You only need to have about 3 out of all of these for you to qualify for the exceptional ability. So at this point, you begin to see that the very first criteria, which says is either you have an advanced degree or you have exceptional ability, then most of us will already qualify for that. Now, after that, what next? Because having an advanced degree or being an exceptional person is not sufficient. The major thing now is the NIW 3-prong test, which is about your proposed endeavor. And that's the next thing I'm just going to talk about briefly. Remember that employment-based simply means that you have an employer who is interested in your expertise, then they give you a job offer. However, again, I reiterate that the EB2 NIW is saying, I do not need a job offer, then you can self-petition. So if you do not need a job offer, then one major thing you have to do is to show and prove your worth through the NIW three-prong test. And what is the three-prong test? I hope I'm not too fast.
No.
All right. The first one is substantial merit and national importance. Just put it this way. Let's say you're a master's student, or even if you're a PhD student, you are doing a research work in a particular field. Or as a master's student, you submitted a thesis, or you did dissertation, or you did project work in a particular field. These are areas where you could begin to see what your abilities are, what you are doing, the advantage of your work, the contribution you are trying to make, the knowledge you are trying to, leverage on in the context of the US or globally. And that's where the part of your substantial merit comes in. So you ask yourself, the work you think you are doing, maybe your dissertation, for example, does it have substantial merit? What are the implications of your work? On a national scale, how important is it, right? So these are things you have to juxtapose in your documentation, in your petition write-up, for you to be able to pass this prong one, substantial merit and national importance. And there are several ways of going about this, of writing about your substantial merit or national importance. For example, Google can help you. If you are doing a research in a particular area, you could just ask Google, what are the national importance of this? That's one. Two, what are the United States government or established entities saying about this, your field? You are able to see some of these things online, government websites, major government agency, institutional websites where they talk about STEM, for example, they talk about climate change. Depending on your research area, they talk about cyber security, software, so many things. You can easily search online to see, this is my field, how is it of importance to the United States? Then you can gain some knowledge about that. Once you are able to write about this in your petition to really show that, yes, you are a valuable candidate, your work is really of substantial merit and it has national importance. Once you can establish that, is a very, very major factor. But in you establishing that substantial merit and national importance, you also want to speak briefly about some of the things you are doing, or some of the things you have done, or some of the things you intend to do. That's why it is proposed endeavor that can tie back and connect to see that truly this is of national importance. And how can you show some of these things? Like I said again and again, some of the thesis or dissertation you've written, some paperwork you've written, some projects you've worked on, some of you that have work experience, the nature of the job you've done, the job duties, the responsibilities, you can connect all that to really show that your work is really of national importance. So it's just about like your storyline of your academic and professional background is something that can speak under this three-prong. Prong number two, well-positioned to advance the proposed endeavor. There is something, now, look at it this way. You have a course you are studying. That is your particular field. It's different from my own field. Now, in that your field, you have a particular area that seems to be of importance, more valuable to you that you are really working on. That is your proposed endeavor. This is something you can talk about. After that, how well positioned are you? Are you well positioned to actually advance this particular area you are talking about? And let me tell you some of the ways you can show that. Just a quick example. For example, your education is one of it. Some of us, even though you are doing a master's or a PhD program. Some of you engage in certifications, right? These are some of the ways you try to prepare yourself to sharpen your skills. So these are ways you can justify how well positioned you are. Some of you, again, have work experience, valuable skills you've gathered, you know, diplomas. These are some of the ways you can show that truly I am well positioned. Because if you say, oh, you're trying to work in this field or in this area, the question would be that, okay, fine, we've had you, but what skills are you made up of? How have you prepared yourself? How can we be sure that truly you can execute your work in this particular field, in this particular area? So your education can be part of it to show that you are well positioned. Certifications, trainings. Some of you have gone to trainings, some of you have gone to workshops. You know, as little as some of these things are ways you can really show that you are well positioned. And if you look at all of these things 360, you will actually see that you have all it takes and you can actually fight for this. It's all about the information and knowing how to go about it. The third one, which the third prong is waive the requirement of a job offer. That's one thing that is so peculiar about the NIW. Remember that we said this category is employment-based, so you must have a job offer from an employer. But now, this category is saying that you do not need a job offer from an employer, right? So, but then, how do you want to prove the case that, see, USCIS, you need to waive the requirement of a job offer for me because I am a valuable candidate? For example, let's assume that you have various skills that could really show that you can execute this, your proposed endeavor. You've been a valuable candidate. And normally, job offers, they put out some requirements. And when you look at some of these requirements, you see that you as an individual, you are actually more well-positioned and you have more of the skills than what they have put out there, right? And so that means you have something higher. And that's one of the ways you could say that, see, even the job requirement that is out there, do not really consider these about this particular field. And so it limits them in getting the best. And so you are saying that, see, you do not need this job offer. You do not need to have it. You do not need to fulfill it so that the country doesn't lose your expertise. You can imagine if there are some jobs and they say, oh, just have a bachelor's degree and you already have a master's degree, you're already doing a PhD. So that means you probably have more qualification than the job requirements. And so these are some of the ways you can adjudicate the fact that they should waive this requirement of a job offer in your own case. And so let's assume that you are now doing a project or a research work that is of real importance. So you need to now let the officer know that if they do not grant you this, the US also can lose your expertise, someone like you, because your expertise could be more appreciated in another country, for example, like Canada, or competing country like China, something like that. So you're trying to create your case that they should grant you this because you are valuable. And trust me, many people have been granted this just by them explaining themselves and fulfilling this criteria. So at the beginning, it might look hard or tough, but when you get into it, when you get more insights, you actually realize that it is something that you can do by yourself. Again, keep your questions, and we're going to look at so many things later on. So overall, for this NIW, your proposed endeavor, it must be beneficiary to the United States or even globally. So let's say, what is really involved in this self-petitioning? There are some kind of writings. You know, the question would be that, oh, where do I start from? Even when I understand some of these basic things. So there are some writing that will take place, and that's the petition itself, the documentation. It is in that writing you want to show to the officer that you have an advanced degree. You also want to show to them that your proposed area, your field, is of substantial merit and national importance. You also want to show to them that indeed you are well positioned. And you also want to show to them that they should waive the job offer. Then you probably want to conclude. So you're going to do some writing, which is in form of documentation. And there are templates that people follow. Some are available online, and I'm going to share some resources with you later on. So the writing depends on you. Some people use 3 months, some people use within 1 month to do their writing and everything. But take note of something, that when you write all of these things, artifacts or exhibits is very, very important. For example, if you say you have an advanced degree, you have a master's degree in mechanical engineering, for example, you must show an artifact or an exhibit to back it up that indeed you have this. Remember, the officers that review your petition do not know you. It is what you have presented to them that they know. And so you want to ensure that every claim you make in your petition is backed up by an exhibit. And the importance of that is for you not to receive what we call RFE, request for evidence, which can delay the whole process again, or even receive denial. Once you get the part of the writing, which is your documentation, your storyline kind of with exhibit and everything, there are some forms you will also fill. You might be seeing online Form I-140, and that's the alien form for permanent resident. This is a very important form you're also going to fill alongside your writing. There is Form ETA 9089, and for those that do premium processing, there is Form I-907. You don't need to cram any of this. When you are set and you want to do all these forms are freely available online. All you need to do is to type in Google. It will take you to the USCIS official website. Then you have access to many of this information. Now, this writing of the petition or forms is something that DIY, you can do it yourself. I am a very strong advocate of do it yourself. And before the end of this slide, you would see this presentation, you would see a link to my YouTube channel, Prof. Dan Tutorials. So one thing I have done is to assist many people to do this thing by themselves. Again, I speak from experience. I also have success stories on the YouTube channel of people who have done it by themselves in different fields, which you can also learn from. So what I'm challenging you with is that you can do it by yourself. Get these resources, watch some of these videos, have understanding of them, listen to them, start putting up your things together. All these resources will give you base, will give you understanding, will give you insights into writing your own petition. If you can write your project, then your project of about more than 150 pages, how much more writing a petition that could probably range from 20 pages to 50 pages, depending on your case, right? So it's all about you having the necessary tools and the understanding. So I'm challenging you, do it yourself. Some people use lawyer, and let me tell you, simple truth is that just yesterday, a lady was telling me that she got approved for the EB1A. This lady had been earlier denied for EB2 NIW. Before then, this lady had consulted with a lawyer who told her, after examining her case, her profile, her CV, that she does not qualify. And the story of this lady has changed after about 2 years, gotten approval for the EB1A. I have persons who they've gone to lawyers and they will tell them that you do not qualify. I don't blame them. I am not a lawyer, I'm a consultant. But the thing is that some of these lawyers want to pick up cases that appears to them to be very easy, right? When it appears to them very easy, they don't do much work, they get their money and they continue. So don't be discouraged when you go to a lawyer, if that's what you want to take, if you have the money, because they charge us up to $10,000. If you have the money and you want to go to lawyer, they could still tell you that you do not qualify. Don't be discouraged by that, because I've seen cases of people who went to lawyers, they do tell them they were not qualified, but eventually they follow the do it yourself, they try to sit down by themselves, and now they have testimonies. Consultants. Consultants are people who, they varies all along. There are people who, that's their own talent and gifts. They know how to tell people story or things like that. They understand the basic nuances of all of these things. If you also have the money, they could charge as less than 50% as what a lawyer could charge. Some consultants charge like $4,500, $4,500, $5,000 and the likes. And some people now do it by themselves, but I encourage you that when you do it by yourself, after you have all these valuable resources, you want to make sure that you give an expert to review your writing for you, right? Just as you write a dissertation, you have people that review your work for you. Even when you submit publications, you get feedback, all of those things. So my own advice is that when you make effort to do it by yourself, before you submit, ensure you reach out to consultants to help you review your petition before submission, which is very, very important. And that can save you a lot. So once all that is done, you review your document, like I said, you make the necessary payments and you submit. All of these things, you might necessarily not have to be thinking about all this now. The first thing is for you to understand, what is this thing all about? How do you do the writing? When you pass that stage and you've connected with people, for example, like the WhatsApp group, which I ask you to join, you can ask questions there about, okay, where do I submit? How do I submit? How do I go about that? You might not understand everything 100% from the very beginning, but as you continue gradually, you start having understanding of it. So I might say, never really mind about how to submit or the payment, but take note that before April 1st, 2024, the payment for this EB2 NIW or the EB1A, which is the payment for Form I-140, that's the main form you're going to fill. That form costs $700 as of before April 1st, 2024. Since April 1st, 2024, the payment has changed. So $715 plus additional $300. These two fees are compulsory. They are important. Plus, if you decide to do a premium processing, you're going to pay additional fee of $2,805. So you want to know the financial implication of all of these things. But the question is, does it worth it? Even if you spend $10,000 to get a permanent resident, a green card, does it worth it? So you have to start planning financially as well. That's why I've mentioned all of this. What's the main difference? If you do not use a premium processing, if you just do the $715 filing with the $300 and you submit your petition, the timeline, the difference is in the timeline. Not like it's going to be, oh, because you pay this amount of money, it means your case will be approved. No. So the main thing is the timeline of you getting the feedback from the USCIS office. So for example, if you do the ordinary fee, it could take as long as 4, 5, 6 months. We've seen people like that. It takes now about 6 months, about 5 or 4 months. If you do the premium processing, it is now 45 business days. Before it's just 45 normal days, but now 45 business days. And if you look at that, that's about saying about 9 weeks, there about 9 weeks. So it shortens the timeline for you to receiving your feedback. If it's approved, if it's denied, or maybe RFE, request for evidence. All right, so, well, I've spoken about all that. Step 4, after you've submitted, eventually, there's going to be a notice of action, which is like a receipt. That's Form I-797C, conditional. So that form will be sent to the mailing address that you provide. And all it does is to confirm that they have received your petition. And so there will be dates assigned, your name will be there, receipt number will be there. That mail is very important. So many will tell you, and it is true, that if in the process, once we start this process, if you change your home address, you must go change that on the USCIS website, because there will be correspondence through mailing. Right? So you want to make sure you do not miss any vital information sent to you. So once you receive the notice of action, which will contain your receipt number, that receipt number is also very important. In many cases, it starts with IOE, then digit numbers. This number can be used to track your case online. So you check your case status by putting in the number there. You would see things like, oh, as of April 5th, 2024, USCIS has started revealing your case. If they sent you anything, you're going to see all the updates there. It's as active as that. Then after some while, you probably see RFE. They've sent you a mail for RFE. Make sure you respond to it within this duration, this period of time, or congratulations, we've been approved. You receive a mail and to make sure you follow the instructions or something like that, or you are denied, which will not be our case. All right, so for this self-petitioning, once you are approved, there is something called the priority date. Now, I will explain it this way. It's always confusing to people, though. When you submit, say, for example, you submit your petition today, you know it's not going to be approved today. Maybe after about 4 weeks or 5 weeks, you receive your approval. But the date you submitted your petition is your priority date, not the date you receive the feedback that your case has been approved or RFE. The date you actually submitted that your petition gets to their office and they acknowledge that they've received your petition, that will be your priority date that will show on the receipt notice when you have been approved. That priority date is very, very important. So as of 2022, there were no queue. And what that means is that if you apply for the EB2 NIW and you get approved, you can proceed to the next stage, which is adjustment of status. That will be the next stage. But as of now, what I'm trying to tell you is that there is queue on ground, which to some, it can be so discouraging. So every month, the USCIS releases what we call the visa bulletin. And that visa bulletin is something you can always check online. Visa bulletin for example, this is April. For May, the visa bulletin has already been released. So it's always released a month, a few days before the next month. So from that visa bulletin, it will show two things, the final action date and the final ruling date. So those dates are so important. Now, when the filing date, or the final action date aligns with your own priority date. Remember, I was trying to explain priority date, which is the date you actually submitted for an approved case. So when you see the visa bulletin and the date on the visa bulletin has now aligned with on or before your own priority date, then you can now proceed to the next stage to adjusting your status. So here is it. Look at it this way. You go to a restaurant, you met people on the queue, and you can't jump the queue. You have to stay on the queue. And as they attend to the person goes, the next person goes, it keeps moving until you get to your stage. So that's this issue about this EB2 NIW. So there is queue on ground. As of the last visa bulletin for May 2024, the final date is February 15, 2023. So it's more or less like more than 1 year now. Now we are in April, it's still February 15, 2023. So what I do tell people is that ideally when you apply now, if you feel you qualify and you apply now and you get approved, it will still take about 1 year, so to say, before you're able to adjust your status. It all depends on how the queue moves. But that's the one major good thing, except for countries like India, China, except for those two main countries, and I think two other ones, except for those countries, every other country has the same, presently, the same filing date of February 15, 2023, because those countries, they have more people on queue. So that's that. And step 6, I talked about adjusting your status. And for you to adjust your status, I wrote here, it is conditioned based on your current status. So I'm going to explain briefly what that means. Say if you are on F1 visa as an international student, and you've applied for this, you can apply for this EB2 NIW or EB1A. Remember, I came to this country as an international student, right? And I'm able to adjust my status to having a permanent green card. So it's not a barrier. For F1, it's quite easy for them to adjust their status. For F2 dependents, it's also very easy. So for those of you that have dependents, maybe you have a spouse, a wife or husband or child, when you apply for this petition originally, the form I-140, fill in the form and your documentation. When you do that, you do not pay for your dependents, though some of their details will be on the form I-140. You only need them when you get to the stage of adjusting your status. That is when they have to file their own forms, because they are going to be a direct beneficiary, which is so superb. I mean, if you are this is the principal applicant, you have applied, you have been approved. If you have 4 dependents, automatically they become beneficiary of adjusting their status as well. So that's for F1 and F2. For the J1 people, is a little bit tricky, but take note, if you are under J1 exchange visitor, take note that you can also apply for the EB2 NIW or the EB1A. You can apply. It doesn't stop you from applying. Don't think, oh, because the criteria is that you have to return back to your home country for 2 years, so you can apply for this case immigration category. No, it's not true. You can apply. The only clause for those under the J1 visa category, exchange visitor, is that when it gets to the point of adjusting their status, they can't proceed immediately. You must do something. And that's now dependent on your country. You have to fill a form, though, with USCIS. That's 1. 2, you need to request for waiver, which is like a no objection statement. You know, ideally, what J1 means is that you are an exchange visitor. To fulfill the criteria, you have to go back to your country and spend at least 2 years before you can come back to have something to do with the US. But if you want to go through this route and you don't want to go back to your home country to spend 2 years and you want to adjust your status, you must receive from your embassy, maybe in Washington or in your own country, if that would be easier to do, to receive a no objection letter from them, because that no objection letter will be needed in a form you have to fill online to tell USCIS that, see, even though my visa category did say I have to return to my own country and spend at least 2 years, but you can see that I've received a no objection letter and I can proceed to adjusting my status. So what I'm saying in a nutshell is that all visa categories you can apply for EB1A or EB2 NIW if you qualify. In fact, some of our clients, let me give you just one example. This man has been in the US since 2016 under asylum. And being an asylum, they've not even, you know, he and his family have not even been interviewed. For the, you know, asylum, you have many cases, people are so much on queue. Since 2016, he and his family has not been interviewed. However, you know, the limitation is that they can't leave the country while their case is still under, you know, process, but they have every other thing. They have their mortgage, they can do some other things, but they can't leave the country. It's just last year, December, that this man got to know about Prof. Dan tutorials and reached out to me. We saw everything, checked everything, and he had a master's degree. He has a good job, even in the US since 2016, though. And now he has been approved for the EB2 NIW. So again, what I'm trying to reiterate here is that regardless of the present status you hold, doesn't stop you from applying for another category. Whether it's a non-immigrant status, F1, F2, J1, for example, or the other category like asylum and the other likes, it doesn't stop you from applying for any other category you see deemed useful. I hope everything is okay. All right, it's a lot of information, you know, but we are time bound. I have to just run through all of these things just to lay the foundation. So, so I think basically that's about EB2 NIW. So before I go to the EB1A, which I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it, just take note that consider yourself if you can apply and make use of the opportunity now. Even people, let me put it this way to you. I have colleagues who, for example, let me be specific. There is a colleague of mine who has been in this country since 2017, finished his PhD. He has a very good job, making about 196,000 annually, which is fair enough. But he didn't apply for the EB1 NIW because he still feels that he is not qualified. Only for him to realize that he actually has more than enough. Some people think you must have obtained your PhD. That's a myth. Some people think you must have publications, many publications. That's not true. Some people think you must have many citation record of your work. That's not true. So leverage on what you have. If you do not have publications, what else do you have? Do you have work experience and you can come in from that angle? If you do not have that, have you received some award, you've done some presentations, even if it's a class presentation or a conference presentation, you do not necessarily have to have journal articles or things like that. So assess yourself, check all of these things, and don't limit yourself. Make hay while the sun shines. So EB1A, I'm not going to repeat a lot of things about the EB2 process again, like the adjustment of status. Everything is the same thing as the EB1A procedure. The only thing is, look at it this way. I always make an analogy. Someone asks you, oh, can you drive this small car? And you said, yes, I can drive the car. That's NIW. And someone goes further to say, can you drive this SUV? Can you drive this truck? Can you drive this trailer? And you are saying, yes, I can drive this car, I can drive this SUV, I can drive this trailer, I can drive this truck. That's more or less like the EB1A, which is like the extraordinary ability. For the EB2 NIW is classified as the exceptional ability. So the criteria that the USCIS used to judge the EB1A is higher than that of the EB2 NIW. That's just it. So one thing I tell people is that if you feel you do not necessarily have that high expectation, just settle for the NIW to save yourself, right? Why some persons, even though they feel they are really qualified, they are top-notch, they still feel like, I'm not sure. So when I'm not sure, let me just settle down for the NIW. And there are some that after they've received the NIW, they now feel like, okay, it works. So my proposed endeavor is actually acknowledged. Okay, I think I have other things valuable for the EB1A. So let me go ahead and apply for the EB1A. And I have a case of someone actually who recently got approved for the EB2 NIW, really. And I'm a research scientist. I like to share people's experience a lot because I believe we learn through experiences. So even though I use pseudonyms, I don't mention people's name, but trust me, I'm telling you people experience. This guy, in fact, his success story is also on my YouTube channel. He received the EB2 NIW approval, then he applied for the EB1A. Eventually, well, he received an RFE, he responded, but it was not approved, it was denied. So what I'm trying to tell you is that it's not a straightforward thing that once you've been approved for the EB2 NIW, it means you're going to be approved for the EB1A. The criteria judging is different. It's high bar. So if you really feel you do not meet that expectation, maybe, and you don't want to lose your money, don't try it. But if you feel that, well, you just want to let me try it, then you can go ahead and try it, okay? So that's one thing about the EB1A category. For the EB1A, there is something specific that the USCIS are looking for. And if you Google it and see EB1A, you will see some of these criteria. Out of about 10 criteria, they say, oh, wow, if you can fulfill at least 3 of these 10 criteria, which is one of the main thing about the distinguished about the EB1A, then you can be approved. Now, let me tell you some of the criteria. So you don't need to have everything. One of it is, have you received awards before? Some of you have received the award. So is there an award in your field? Maybe you went for a conference presentation, for example, and you received an award of best paper presentation or an award from your department or something like that. It all depends on how you tell the story. Say, for example, today, Ivan gave me a certificate. If I'm applying for EB1A, depending on how I try to navigate and tell the story, I could speak it in a way that this is an award, not just a certificate. I'm just trying to tell you that it all depends on how you try to, you are not lying, but telling your story in a more justifiable, compelling manner can make a difference between person A and person B. So award can be in various forms. So if you have received an award before, or you've judged the work of others. Now, I'm saying some of these things because if you start looking at some of these things and you want to go this route and you are aware of some of these things, then you are intentional. So if, say, you are just starting your master's or you're just starting your PhD and you are thinking about this area, then you can start like, oh, okay, let me start doing some of these things intentionally for the purpose of you using it for your petition. So have you judged the work of others? For example, this is common in, I just recently, FIU did, is a Graduate Student Appreciation Week. And you will see them, they will send out emails at times like, oh, there is senior design. If you're in this field and you want to judge, reach out, something like that. These are some of the voluntary services that can actually be to your own advantage, that you can take advantage of. So again, that's one of the criteria. Have you judged the work of others in your field? Do you have publications? Do you command high salary? You know, some of this, you don't need to have all. Just look at them and see which one fits you more and put your strength on that particular one. So that's just a general overview about the EB1A. And I know it's a lot, but I'm going to leave you with this. If you want to do, well, let me put it this way. I can share an email with you. Just 2 days ago, Danny, I've forgotten the last name, someone sent me an email and said, oh, I'm not saying verbatim what this person said. This person said, I just saw your email via one of the YouTube videos, and I just wanted to say thank you so much because 2 months ago, I actually got approval, and the person was narrating a story that my YouTube videos assisted them a lot. So what I'm trying to say is that, again, like I said, I'm an advocate of do it yourself. I'm someone that when I pass through something, I want to make it easier for people. That's my own stamp, making the complex simple. And I do know that many people will reach out to me. I do not have, imagine when 1,000 people are reaching out to me, I do not have the time to give to them because I'm very busy. So one thing I did from the very beginning is I'm going to create a playlist, more or less like a workshop. If you have the time, you watch, it's all good for you. And one thing I'm telling you is that it has helped people a lot. So if you're thinking of where do you start from, how do you get more understanding about this, this would be one of your best shots. On this playlist, if you want to do the EB2 NIW, you will see the EB2 NIW playlist. About 17 episodes are there. Start with each of these episodes at your free time. Maybe when you are driving, when you are less busy, just play the video. Listen to it. Is a workshop. It's more or less like a workshop, which will put you through how you can start thinking about your own writing. There is also the EB1A. Those of you, that one is not done yet. I'm still working on it. And many other available resources that can be of help to you. So it is my hope that you do it yourself and you get approval, you become a legal permanent resident here in the United States. I think one more thing. Okay, so this is my business website. Is a limited liability company. It's registered in Indiana. So you can also visit there and see some of our services, which could include like revealing your petition for you and any other thing you want to do. So at this junction, I think that will be it. And thank you for listening.